California Living Fire Safe is sponsored in part by Pacific Gas and Electric Company, who reminds you that tree trimming practices near power lines not only reduce power outages, but most importantly, make California living safer for all of us.
We have a fire on two fronts.
They are California's recurring nightmare: wildfires. In late summer and fall, driven by hot winds and fed by bone-dry vegetation, they storm across the Golden State, leaving behind their annual residue of personal loss and blackened landscape. Like the weather, the fire season is hard to predict. No one could have foreseen the devastation of 2003. 14 major fires burning in 5 counties, flames soaring above centuries-old trees, consuming 750,000 acres. Thousands of homes destroyed, 24 dead. But amid the ruins, countless lives were saved and thousands of homes survived. The fact is, we can't always predict wildfire, but we can prepare and protect our families, homes, and communities.
Speaking of predictions, people thought it couldn't happen here, but it did. A catastrophic firestorm that destroyed over 3,000 homes right here in the Oakland Hills, and one of them was mine. I'm Vicki Liviakis.
And I'm Craig Miller. You know, all of the homes that were on this hillside prior to the infamous 1991 East Bay firestorm, every single one of them burned to the ground.
In the next half hour, with help from leading experts, we'll be learning the basic steps you can take to protect the people you love and the possessions you cherish.
It's all about controlling nature's wrath. As a news reporter and a member of my county's search and rescue team, I've seen firsthand the havoc that natural disasters can wreak on our lives. But these hills hold particularly disturbing memories.
It was in these foothills overlooking the San Francisco Bay that in 1991, a firestorm with conditions very much like this wiped out homes along the ridge. I lost virtually everything I owned, including one of my 2 dogs. My family and I were lucky enough to escape with our lives.
That was where you went up through the deck? That's the fireplace?
That's our fireplace, Mike.
Being involved with the traumatic aftermath was one of the most painful events of my life. That experience is just one of the reasons we want to do everything possible to help you protect and defend your homes and families.
When it comes to fire and life safety, the effort you invest now will pay off even if you never experience a wildfire. So, let's get started. First, we're heading to Southern California, where I'll check in with a veteran firefighter for a quick primer on the principles of fire and life safety.
Then I'll be in Glendora, where we'll learn how to make your landscaping the first line of defense against wildfire.
Next stop, Redlands, where we'll explore the latest developments in fire-safe building standards and how to evacuate in case of fire.
We'll also visit California communities where fire safety is a way of life.
Well, what do you say we head south?
Let's get the show on the road.
All right, safe travels.
Take care.
We're here in Riverside at the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, better known to most of us as CDF. We'll be talking with Rick Vogt, who's a captain here and a career firefighter.
So, not much going on today.
Hey, Rick.
Hi, Craig.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Well, this place certainly has that nerve center feel to it, but what actually happens here?
Well, this is the Southern California Operations Center. It's where resources are coordinated and deployed to emergencies.
And when you say resources, you're talking about?
Air tankers, fire engines, hand crews, anything that's needed for a wildfire.
Okay. Another question for you. This term fire safe, what does that actually mean to you?
Well, being fire safe means that your home is prepared for the eventuality of a fire.
Okay, so let's say I've taken the steps and made my property fire safe. I take it that's not a guarantee.
Well, that's a good question. We've done historical reviews of homes and fires, and we've consistently found that the combination of a fire-safe landscape and a fire-rated roof greatly improves a home's chances for survival.
Greatly meaning?
Well, in one case we found that it could increase the chances up to 86%.
Wow, okay, that's hard to argue with. But now let's say I don't do anything.
Well, if a home isn't fire safe, it probably won't survive a wildfire. During a major fire, there aren't enough fire engines to immediately protect every structure. Homeowners need to do what they can to give the firefighters time to do their job. For example, a study of Santa Barbara's paint fire shows homes with untreated wood-shake roofs and inadequate brush clearance had a survival rate of less than 4%.
4%. So you're saying that a house that has not been made fire safe is virtually asking for trouble.
Exactly.
But doesn't it make a difference where you live?
That's right. Millions of us live in or near what we call the wildland-urban interface. This is where homes are built in or next to natural areas. Some plants in these areas actually depend on fire for survival. When fire removes thick stands of shrubs, it increases the water supply. California has naturally adapted to fire.
Okay, so if plants provide most of the fuel for wildfire, then I guess a lot of being fire safe just comes down to landscaping.
Absolutely. In fact, as soon as we're done here, I'm heading over to Glendora, where your co-host Vicki and I are going to look at the crucial connection between landscape and a fire-safe home.
All right, well, in that case, I think we are done here. Thanks for the tour, Rick.
You're welcome.
Well, Vicki, I'm guessing that you've picked out a house that's just undergone a complete fire-safe landscaping makeover.
That's right, Craig. Not long ago, the landscaping around this house was essentially a welcome mat for any approaching fire. All it took was a close call for SP Bone Christiani and her husband to decide they needed a change of scenery. SP, tell me a little bit about the fire that threatened your house.
Well, it was the Williams fire in 2002, and we didn't think it was going to be a problem because it looked so far away.
So what was more important to you, safety or aesthetics?
We pretty much knew when we moved up here what we ultimately wanted it to look like, and we wanted more of a park-like setting. And initially we hired crews to come out because there was so much to do.
You know, it sounds like you've done a terrific job in taking care of business. I hear Rick driving up, so why don't we just get in the yard and see what's been done?
Okay, great.
Hey Rick, good to see you.
Hi Vicki, nice to see you.
Can you walk us through exactly what it took to turn this landscaping into that living fire barrier you were telling Craig about?
Well, Vicki, first and foremost, homeowners need to be aware of the fact that state law actually requires them to install and maintain defensible space. Now that's removing all flammable vegetation within 100 feet of structures on their property. This is a platform from where firefighters can work during a wildfire. This defensible space is the backbone of a fire-safe landscape.
So homes throughout California, do they all have to maintain that 100-foot barrier?
You know, that's a good question. State law recently changed in January 2005, upping the minimum requirement from 30 foot to 100 foot. For example, if your house is on a hillside, you may want to clear flammable plants 300 feet or more around the house. That's why it's critical for homeowners to check local ordinances.
You know, you also talked about removing all flammable vegetation from an area. Does that mean having a bare ring of dirt around the house or what?
Not at all. What you really want to do is create a green belt of irrigated, low-growing, fire-resistant plants. And lucky for us, there are plenty of options to choose from here in California. Because of the differences in area vegetation and geography, you'll want to check with your local nursery to find the best plants for your needs.
So tell us a little bit about how this particular project unfolded.
Well, originally, their landscaping was an accident waiting to happen. It was completely overgrown with what we call ladder fuels, or in other words, untrimmed, overgrown plants that would have helped any fire climb up from the ground, into the trees, and eventually over to the house. Once that area was cleared, the first task was to develop a fire-safe landscaping plan, which required installing an irrigation system.
But aren't most fire-resistant plants drought-resistant too?
Well, careful, Vicki. Drought-resistant doesn't necessarily mean fire-resistant. Even so, a healthy, well-watered plant is far more likely to be fire-safe.
What kind of plants did they select?
They put in plants that are low-growing. They don't generate very many dead leaves or dry branches that could serve as fuel for a wildfire.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I've also noticed they're well-spaced.
They are, and you know that's good practice no matter how old your landscaping is. You also want to make sure that your plants are well-trimmed and litter-free.
How about trees? Do you have any suggestions?
Sure. Trees, you need to plan for how large they'll be when they're mature and make sure they're at least 10 feet from the structure. But you also want to keep your eyes on nearby power lines. Plant too close to the lines and you risk creating a dangerous contact that can generate sparks.
Now, Rick, what if we already have tall trees on the property?
Well, if the trees are touching the power lines, the homeowners need to contact the power companies immediately. They'll be happy to come out and trim the trees back free of charge.
And about types of trees, are some more flammable than others?
Yes, conifers like pine, cedar, and juniper can be extremely flammable. In the case of this particular home, they were lucky. The trees that you see were part of the original landscape. All they had to do was add some jute mesh and some new plants to hold in the soil.
You know, it's really neat. I've noticed that not only is it beautiful, but everything really has that California look too.
Well, you're right. Native plants are well adapted to the climate and conditions. Just check in with your nearest CDF headquarters, local fire agency, or UC Cooperative Extension to get a list of what's recommended for your own region.
So Rick, what about the work that's been done to the outskirts of the yard?
Well, in general, the spacing between large shrubs and trees is essential, even in this area, to ensure that you don't have a continuous fuel supply that could lead a wildfire right to the door.
You know, standing here, you can see that what they've done has really reduced the amount of fuel and then increased the fire safety conditions for the Bone Cristianes.
They've done a great job.
And now let's help them out and put up the finishing touches.
Sure, if you'll give me a hand, we'll put up the address sign that'll help firefighters find their home during a fire. Now the number should be reflective, 3 inches high, 3/8 of an inch wide, and on contrasting background.
Okay. Looks good.
Looks great.
Thanks for the tour and the explanation, Rick.
You're welcome.
For more information about fire-safe landscaping and creating defensible space, drop by our website at fire.ca.gov. Now that we've covered the yard, it's time to turn our attention to the house. Craig's at a home site in Redlands where we're going to get an up-close look at fire-safe construction.
Well, Vicki, let's take it from the top and the roof. It is by far your home's biggest horizontal surface and therefore the most vulnerable not just to flames but to flying embers, which can travel up to 1 mile from the fire itself. The longer your roof can withstand the assault from those embers, the better your home's chance of survival. Redlands Fire Marshal Leonard Temby inspects homes for compliance with local fire-safe building codes. And Leonard, from the way you're looking around, I gather we're not just talking about that top layer of roofing here.
Absolutely, Craig. Many layers make up the roof system or classification, those classifications being Class A, Class B, and Class C, A being the best.
And these classes are just ranking the roof's ability to withstand fire.
We're talking about the total protection of the roof deck, we're talking about the roof deck's flammability, and we're talking about the roof deck's tendency to produce flying brands and embers that would threaten the neighbor's house.
Well, but wait a minute, don't all homes today have to have Class A fire-rated roofs?
You need to check with your local building official, your local fire marshal, see what the codes are in your area for a Class A roof. Here today we're in a hazardous fire area.
Okay.
This house actually burned down as part of some 300 houses that burned down in the old Waterman Canyon fire.
Okay. So this is being rebuilt now.
This is being
with
rebuilt
a Class A roof.
with a Class A roof. Here's an example. You have your roof sheeting, your felt paper, and your concrete tile, which makes up your Class A roof assembly.
Now, what about the old wood shake roof? Would you advise anybody to have one of those?
Only if it's a pressure-treated, fire-retardant wood shake roof that meets the strict California Building Code standards. Any other wood roof is very dangerous.
And yet these newer fire-retardant materials, they have to cost more.
They do cost more, but a recent CDF study shows that a fire-retardant roof increases the structure's survivability by 50%.
Whoa, well, it's tough to put a price on something like that. But now let's take this as an example where we are. It's brand new construction, lots of opportunities to make it fire safe, but a lot of us live in older homes. What about us?
Well, for those of you that live in older homes, if you have a wood shake roof and you're not sure that it's pressure treated and fire retardant, the wood shake roof needs to come off.
Wow.
The good news is that you don't have to start from scratch to make a fire safe house. For example, keep your gutters clear, and when you're doing a remodel job, always use fire safe materials.
Speaking of materials, Leonard, I'm seeing a lot of this galvanized mesh laying around the site.
There's two materials here. One is the 1/2-inch mesh that you see here,
Bigger
and this
one.
is for the chimneys for like spark arresters.
Oh, okay.
The 1/4-inch mesh, the smaller mesh, would be used for attic vents or vents along the soffits here.
Keep embers out,
To keep
basically,
embers out,
right?
correct.
Speaking of which, aren't the eaves awfully vulnerable to that too?
These eaves will be boxed and enclosed.
That's what that cross piece
That's
is
what the
for, that
cross
little
member
extra
is to,
piece?
is to box the non-combustible materials.
Now over here we've got a window going in. Anything we can do with windows?
Yes, you can. The windows need to be either dual or triple glazed windows to prevent embers or burning debris to striking the windows and entering the house.
Okay, just harder to penetrate.
Harder
in
to
other words.
penetrate, that's right.
Just about every California house has a deck, you've probably noticed.
Yes.
Are those vulnerable too?
Decks should be made of fire-resistant materials. They should be boxed and enclosed,
Just like the eaves.
just like the eaves.
Well, Leonard, thanks very much for giving us
You
some
bet.
insight on the outside, so to speak. Now we're going to catch up with Vicki. She's with Terry Mizuhara from CDF, and they're going to give us some ideas on things we can do to improve fire and life safety inside the house.
Thanks, Craig. You know, Terry, during my own experience, my family barely escaped with their lives. To be honest, we didn't have a real evacuation plan. Is that something that's fairly common?
It is, Vicki, but as you found out, families need evacuation plans and they need to practice them on a regular basis, especially in the case that they're ordered to evacuate. However, you shouldn't wait till you're ordered out. If you're on your own and it's your call, when in doubt, get out.
What makes for a good plan?
It doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, the simpler the better. This plan shows the house and all its exits, and it shows where the family is supposed to meet after they're out, which is important in case they get separated. And it's human nature to try and save as much as you can by grabbing things on your way out. Here's something I really like, a checklist of the few most important things this family wants to take with them, if there's time. And of course, time is critical, so keep the list short. A basic list might include your homeowner's insurance policy with pictures of your house, a home inventory, a computer backup disk, and maybe a family photo album.
Thank you so much for that useful information, Terry. If you'd like more information about fire and life safety around your house, just download the homeowner's checklist at our CDF website at fire.ca.gov. Like most newer homes, this one is built to the latest fire safe codes. Of course, the older your house, the more steps you'll need to take to make it fire safe. Well, Craig is up in the California foothills to learn how a little bit of science and a lot of elbow grease have produced a well-oiled, community-based fire safety program.
Well, Vicki, why don't we start with the science component of that? You know, we started out this program by sort of conceding that wildfires are, by nature, unpredictable, and yet CDF does lead the nation in applying fire science to both stopping and preventing wildfires. Here in Nevada County, they're especially fortunate because a lot of that work is going on right here. Right now, in fact, Sean Griffiths is the pre-fire engineer for CDF in Nevada County. Sean, when I hear pre-fire, I'm thinking that's got to be prevention. Am I close?
Yeah, that's correct. It's my responsibility to analyze the data that's out there, fuels, weather, and topography, to identify those areas that are at the highest risk to a costly and damaging fire.
Okay.
On the protection side, we know what we're supposed to do. We fight fire aggressively and safely.
Sure.
However, on the prevention side, we need to be able to get the word out to the public as to what they can do to prevent a fire from spreading into their home.
Okay.
And we're able to do that with the help of our local fire safe councils.
I'm glad you brought up this idea of the Fire Safe Council because I think it's time that I got out there and found out exactly how these councils work. So thanks a lot. Welcome. Well, it turns out that a Fire Safe Council is a community-based group made up of ordinary citizens, anybody really who's interested in improving community fire safety. Now, up here in Grass Valley, they've attacked the fuel component of this fire danger equation that we were talking about earlier with Sean. This is Michelle Phillips. She heads up the Nevada County Fire Safe Council and is in charge of the brush clearing and, I guess, public education component too, right?
Yeah.
So what have you got here?
It's our fire hazard rating map. It
Okay.
helps us to prioritize our areas in planning for defensible space clearing and chipping.
Okay.
Last year alone, we treated up 800 properties with our free chipping program.
800 just in this county.
Yeah.
How do you manage that with what I would think has to be a small group of people?
A lot of teamwork. The homeowners do all the stacking and cutting and clearing themselves, and we provide the chippers and the crews to do the chipping.
How's that working out?
Good so far. Clearing the brush the first time is definitely an accomplishment.
Yeah, but then it keeps growing back, right?
It does. Our office receives hundreds of phone calls requesting chipper services, and we can barely keep up with the demand for services.
Well, I guess that's not a bad problem to have in your position, though.
It's not. Our programs are definitely working.
Congratulations. Sounds like they are. Now, to find out where the nearest Fire Safe Council is to you, or if you want to start one, just drop by our website and look for the link that says firesafecouncil.org. With more than 125 of these local councils around California, you might say the idea is spreading like wildfire. In fact, Vicki is down in San Diego County right now with one of these newer councils to find out how this all works at the grassroots level.
Kind of like this, Craig. If you live in Carvacre, a seemingly innocent question like, hey, what are you doing for the weekend, can easily turn into a couple of hours of brush clearing. Dave Duke is a firefighter and the co-founder of the Carvacre Fire Safe Council. Every weekend, he recruits his neighbors for chipper duty, so who am I to resist the call? Hi, Dave.
Hi, Vicki.
Seriously, you're devoting a chunk of your time here, and this isn't even your house.
Well, we have 80 homes here in Carvacre, and we know the fire department response time is going to be 20 minutes. So we either stand on our own right here, or we lose everything we have.
And this is part of how you make your stand?
That's right. The brush used to grow right up close to the roads and around most of the houses. But now I feel like we have pretty good clearance.
So it's good work. I mean, is this something you charge for?
No, we don't charge. We do ask for donations, but most of our funding comes from federal grants.
Money certainly well spent. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have a fire safety program that is in need of financial help, you'll want to check with the National Fire Plan. They're on the web at grants.firesafecouncil.org. Greg is up in Butte County. I sure hope he's breaking a sweat.
Not only am I not sweating, Vicki, but I'm in paradise. Paradise, California, that is. It's a town of about 27,000 people up in the foothills east of Chico. Now, this area I'm standing in now is known as a shaded fuel break. What that means is they've cleared away a lot of the ground level brush and thinned out quite a few of the smaller trees. What that leaves is a much less volatile canopy overhead. In the days before Smokey Bear exhorted us to prevent all forest fires, nature routinely used fire to clear the forest floor. The result was a landscape like this, where a fire is less likely to become a major disaster. This fuel break provides an attractive and practical buffer between an advancing wildfire and the homes on the other side. It's one of the many projects supported by members of the Butte County Fire Safe Council, where Brenda Reitmeyer is the hands-on coordinator. Brenda, what got you involved in your community's Fire Safe Council?
Well, we're a small, tight-knit group up here, Craig, and we have many friends that have lost home to wildfires. I got involved at the Fire Safe Council because I really don't want to see that happen again.
No, of course not. And yet, for a relatively small community, it's a lot of work. It's a pretty big project to take on.
Yes, but it must be done, and it must be done by the community. Some of the homes up here are so close together that anything short of 100% compliance is unacceptable. Otherwise, the fire can travel real quickly from home to home.
Well, so far, would you say the effort is paying off?
Oh, it sure is. And if you have a few more minutes, I'd like to show you another shaded fuel break that was instrumental in saving over 1,000 people's homes.
Oh, I would absolutely like to see that.
Well, let's go.
All right. Well, Brenda, we're up here a little higher elevation now, but this shaded fuel break here looks an awful lot like the one you showed me before, except obviously less shaded.
It really is, and it was one that was put to the test and worked, created by a private property owner, and PG&E at the clearance under and around the power lines.
Yeah, I see that.
In fact, here's Ed McGreeny from Pacific Gas and Electric Company.
Hey, Ed, good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Since you're here, let me ask you, why such a focus on clearing around these power lines?
Well, we clear around the power lines in order to provide safe and reliable service to our customers. And to comply with all state and federal laws. And probably the most important thing is to reduce the risk of fire and save lives.
Well, sure. In fact, Brenda says you've had some pretty remarkable success with that already.
Yes, we have. A few years ago, there was a Highway 70 fire that came burning up along this ridge. When it hit the fuel break that was created underneath the power lines, it knocked the fire down, which allows the firefighters to contain it.
It saved the town of Concal, about 1,300 residents.
Good job. Brenda, Ed, thanks to both of you for showing us in very graphic terms how both community action and corporate involvement can save lives and property.
My pleasure. We're PG&E at your service.
You bet. In fact, it looks like you're really making a difference up here right now. Thanks again. Well, now let's catch up with Vicki. She's down in the San Bernardino Mountains with another community whose program was put to the test. And because it passed that test, folks down there still have a community to go home to.
The Grand Prix was one of 14 fires in 2003 that together mounted the most horrific fire siege in state history. It threatened to destroy all 350 homes in Lytle Creek that year, but nearly all of them survived. Call it a miracle? Not quite. Here in Lytle Creek, the community's best firefighters don't have snazzy helmets or own a Dalmatian. They're homeowners, just like you and me, who created defensible space by trimming or removing trees and other overgrown brush. And as Ellen Polema tells us, their hard work paid off.
By Marion.
Ellen, tell us exactly what happened here.
The fire came right behind the homes, and the battalion chief was ready to pull out his crew, and he wasn't sure of the area. The Forest Service rep told him it was safe, we had done our defensible space, so the battalion chief came back in, and they saved our way of life.
Ellen, is this where it all happened?
This is exactly where it happened. There was a 30-foot wall of flames, and there might have been only a dozen firefighters to defend it. And they were able to get up to this area because of the defensible space around the homes. And it's living proof that with a fire-safe environment around your home, you can save them.
What an amazing story, and a terrific example of how a community can come together and actually control nature's wrath. People thought it couldn't happen here, but it did. A catastrophic firestorm that
see that what they've
done
has really reduced the amount of fire safe.
If you live in Carvaker, a seemingly innocent
There was a 30-foot wall of flames, and there might have been only a dozen firefighters.
Well, we've traveled up and down the state, and everywhere we've gone, we've seen there really is a risk of fire danger. But we've also seen some inspiring stories from people who are actually doing something about it.
like turning your yard into fire-safe landscaping and increasing your home's chances of surviving a wildfire from 38 to 78%. That's doubling your odds. How do you get this edge?
Create a defensible space around your property by thinning and clearing flammable plants for at least 100 feet around your home, and maybe more, depending on local ordinances.
Use a reflective address sign with contrasting lettering to help firefighters find your house in case of a fire.
Your roof is the most vulnerable part of your house. Keep trees trimmed back at least 10 feet from structures, and clean leaves off the roof and out of the gutters.
Cover attic openings and chimneys with mesh to keep embers from getting in or out. Consider boxing in your awnings so air currents can't trap embers in the eaves.
When you replace your roof, be sure to use a Class A material that provides the best defense against fire.
At ground level, make sure to box in below any decks to keep embers or flames from igniting the underside. If you're building a deck, opt for fire-resistant materials. Whenever you purchase building materials, check your local ordinances to make sure you're in compliance. If you have to leave your home, don't hesitate. Go immediately. Have an evacuation plan. Know every exit and where your family will meet if they're separated.
And have an evacuation checklist just in case you have time to take anything. List only what you absolutely need and know where it all is during fire season.
I didn't have time for anything when my house burned. I lost it all. But nothing you own is worth your life. So keep in mind that part of being fire safe means getting to safety when fire threatens.
Consider joining or starting a local fire safe council where you live. When fire threatens, your neighbors may be your best protection.
And if you're wondering if all this hard work is worth it, just ask any of the folks here in Lytle Creek or take it from me. The answer is yes.
The decisions you make today will eventually determine how successful you are at controlling nature's wrath.
Thanks for watching.
So long.
California Living Fire Safe is sponsored in part by Pacific Gas and Electric Company. It's the tree trimming efforts and other precautionary measures by PG&E that keep your lights on and your community safe. Learn more at pge.com.